Welcome, everybody, to episode 24 of Behind the Brand, and thanks for tuning in. This is a podcast where we talk with business owners and professionals about their business, their brand, and what all of that means to them. And today we have our guest, a very special guest, Marie-Louise Burkle. Autac in North Branford.
Autac.
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 Mm-hmm.
See, I even wrote it down and I got it wrong. Autac.
People do that all the time.
So, Marie, thanks from Autac. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Founded in 1947. Just give us a quick glimpse back in the past. Your dad founded it, and sort of why did he do it? What was the need, and sort of go from there.
So, according to legend, my father was a pharmaceutical salesman at the time, and was approached by a friend of his who saw an opportunity as a distributor for trucking cords specifically. So they started out in Hamden on Dixwell Avenue in what is, last I knew, a tanning salon now, as a distributor of trucking cables, neoprene trucking cables.
Awesome. And so Autac, they specialize in coiled cables.
Correct.
So is that where you started, or was it just cables?
Yeah, the trucking cables were all coiled cables, and one of the things that we did was the value added of putting on the plugs. There's a molded rubber plugs. So we did that for the first 40 years that we were in business.
And then what was sort of the transition? How did it evolve?
So towards the end of the 60s, as the deregulation of the trucking industry was coming down the pike, my father foresaw the bottoming out of that industry for selling the coil cords, and decided to diversify over into the extrudable plastic side of things. So that's when we broke ground in 76 for our manufacturing plant, which opened in 1977, and we started producing our own wire to make coil cords from 28 gauge up to 10 gauge for every industry. Automation wasn't around then, it is now, but we do everything from automation, ophthalmology, to gas and fuel mining.
Wow, holy cow. Now, we were talking a little bit before, and I told you I searched Autac, and I came to a company in England, which you said you once were associated with. How did that come about, and why did you guys separate?
So in the 1960s, my dad worked with a gentleman named George Gregg from England, and together they also worked with someone from Canada. This is a little before my time, so I don't know all the names. And they started an international distribution for the trucking cords. And Autac Ltd, which is in the UK, and Autac USA worked together until just after my father passed away in the 70s. And then between my father passing away and some changes in the electrical regulation, it was a reasonable split. So
Okay.
We're still friendly, we still talk, but they're two very different companies.
Good. What do you do? Like, what is specifically, we didn't even touch on that yet, what is specifically does Autac produce? What do you make?
Well, I always like to say we sell customer service and we give people coil cords to remember us by. But we are a manufacturer. We start from stranded copper. We make our own insulated singles, cable them, jacket them. So we do make straight wire, but we make the straight wire specific to be coil cords. And we make the coil cords. We have 110 constructions that we keep on the shelf in 4 different lengths, so 440 items that we consider inventory items. We are lean, so I don't want my accountant to have a stroke if she hears this. We don't keep them on the shelf, but we have the straight wire there. And then we also, 22 years ago when I took over, I decided to go over to the boutique side of manufacturing because for small businesses, for people who are trying to make prototypes, it's very, very difficult to get the cable that you need. Large companies want large accounts, and so a lot of the small guys were being ignored. This was also when offshoring got to be really big. So we saw a lot of small businesses suffering and going down the tubes, and I decided instead of trying to compete with China, to do what they didn't want to do, which was to specialize in the small businesses and the customer service.
That was my next question. China. So everything is right in China. What is there? Are they a big competitor of yours?
So we did see a mass exodus in the wire and cable industry over to Asia, starting in the early 90s. It was probably long before most of the rest of the world was aware it had started. The wire and cable industry, clearly wire and cable is involved in everything. So I call it a sleeper industry. We have it everywhere, but people don't necessarily keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on. So it did go overseas. We have a lot of big companies in wire and cable who were able to afford to make those moves. With the coil cords, it didn't affect us quite as much as the people who are in your more generic wire and cable, but we certainly saw some of the business go. And I think the bigger problem became the pricing, because there are companies here in the United States who do coil-only work, so they buy the wire from somebody else, coil it, and sell it. And to compete on price there became very difficult. But fortunately for us, to this day, the overseas manufacturers haven't seemed to really dial into the magic to make a coil cord, because there is a lot of science to something so simple. Yeah. So our quality really helped keep us going over the years and staved off a lot of that loss for us.
Can you take any wire and make it coiled?
No. So you can't.
So the wire you make, do you sell straight wire?
We do sell straight wire. We make straight wire, so we sell it. It's not our biggest part of our business, but for many of our established customers, when they're in a situation where they need something small quantity specialty, we do that for them.
And the wire you make, straight wire, will work just like any other straight wire, or do they buy it for a?
Wire and cable is regulated by Underwriters Laboratories, and they give you parameters for safety, so you don't electrocute yourself, because that's bad. So for coil cords, when you make them, you want to be above those minimum standards as far as your insulation thickness, your jacket thickness on the wire. So if I go out to market and I buy straight wire from distribution and take it in to coil it, it may not have the magic that it needs to hold that coil, retain that coil, and it just kind of falls apart. One of my customers once, it's my favorite expression, said his cord looked like an anemic goat. So when you make the coil cords, you wrap them around a mandrel. They go through a baking process, a cooling process, and a reversing process. Okay. And if you don't have a thick enough jacket on the outside, as it goes through the heating process, that jacket shrinks down, and you can actually see the ribs of the conductors inside. Yeah. So that's a problem, because you need a certain amount of thickness on that jacket to prevent electricity from, if you will, leaking out of the wire, which can cause an electrocution hazard.
So I couldn't take an extension cord that I bought at Home Depot and make it coiled?
According to YouTube, you can.
Of course.
I've seen them coil them. I haven't seen them a month later. So you can certainly try, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. So I was thinking the other day, industries that may have gone away, right? Like the phone industry. Was that a big industry for you? And
no, we never did much with the telecommunications. Okay. So they used flat wire, and our wire is round, which is why those coil cords on the phones back in the day used to tangle around each other and become a big pretzel. Oh. The rounded cords have a better retractability, and they don't tend to cross over themselves and get all mangled up.
Okay.
So we never bothered with that. We left that again to the commodities.
Okay, interesting. Huh. Yeah, because I was thinking, okay, what other businesses? But that's the only one I could think of that had a coiled cord that's not around anymore. But
you say that. I've played a game now for 23 years, and when I watch TV, I make note of coil cords in the programs. Okay. And it is amazing how often you see them. So Grey's Anatomy, medical. Yeah. Ice Road Truckers in the trucking cabs. Okay. They're all over the place. Yeah. It's amazing. Anywhere that you have a large collection of wire and cable that you'd like to make a little neater or a little safer, there's an application for a coil cord there.
Yeah. Well, our headphones are coiled, which helps. But yeah, I guess I think there are some video cables and different audio cables that are coiled just for that reason. Keep a little bit more compact.
Keep
Yeah.
it nice and neat. I mean, I wish somebody would coil all the 700 wires coming off the back of my computer so
right.
they'd lay nicely instead of, again, becoming a mangled mess.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
got somebody who can help you with that. Yeah. So what's the process? So so do you make your cable, the one you make for your product, with a thicker jacket, I would presume, than
So
maybe.
we start with our stranded copper, and that gets the insulation put on it. So a typical wire that you have laying around your stereo studio is 3 conductor, probably 18 gauge or 16 gauge. So you have 3 different insulated singles in there. There's
Right.
3 different colors, because that's how we know what to plug in where without, again, electrocuting ourselves. So we make those insulated conductors, and then we bring them over and we cable them to make the nice core that goes inside, and then we put the jacket on top. And yes, the insulation, so the minimum wall thickness that UL recommends for insulation is 8 millimeters. We do 12,
Okay.
in that particular category. So we have to stay above that for a number of reasons, to give it the memory. Also, when you coil it around the rods, you're putting pressure on the inside seat of those coils. And it's just like, after COVID, some of us could, if we bent over in our pants, they'd split because we were trying to put 5 pounds in 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. It's the same type of thing. When you
Gotcha.
don't have enough of a jacket on that and you put pressure on it, that jacket can split.
Does the jacket shrink? So if you started with 12, now it's 11?
So there is a shrinkage process involved there. If we're looking to make a coil cord that, say, is 12 inches retracted when we're finished, depending on the material we're working with, we may coil that anywhere from 13 to 15 inches. And then once it bakes and it cools and it goes through the reversing process, it'll come down to that 12 inches. It's similar to, remember when you were a kid, those Chinese finger puzzles, those wicker,
yep.
you'd put your fingers in there and they'd suck it,
Yep.
in. It's very similar. When you reverse the cord, it's here and then it reverses down and shrinks in, and that is what gives it its memory.
Gotcha. Did you think when your dad was building this, his factory over in North Branford, I mean, was this something you knew you were going to go into, running the business, working in the business? I mean, did you work on the floor in a particular time making the coil?
So if you look on our website, you'll see actually a picture of my dad and I together at the groundbreaking for the manufacturing plant. I was maybe 4
Okay.
at the time, but as far as I was concerned, I was always going to be with Autac.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time with my dad. He brought me to work when I was little, so from the ages of 3 to nearly 6 when he passed away, I spent a lot of time at Autac. I was out on the floor in the warehouse. I got to build the boxes, and I could steer the forklift, and I ran the postage meter for the gals in the office and did different things like that. So I was there and I was around it.
So there was no question really.
Yeah, wire in the blood
Yeah.
from day one.
So
Yeah,
there was no
yeah.
I'm going to go try something else. That was never the case.
No, I think especially once my father passed away, because I was so close to him, it was just a matter of, it was something I wanted to do to keep his legacy alive.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Wire in the blood.
Wire in the blood.
So it was just you? Any other family in the business?
No. Okay. So I'm an only child from my parents' marriage, and that's how I was raised. So it's just little old me.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's terrific. And how's business? I mean, you said that you added some employees and things are picking up.
Yeah, COVID actually was a boon for us.
Okay.
We were a tier 1 supplier with the White House, so that kept us essential. We were up
What is
and
the White
going out
House
to us. I'm
order?
sorry.
What is the White House?
So the White House
describe
has a what's the word I'm looking for? Procurement division of its own for defense,
Okay.
utilities,
Gotcha.
agriculture, certain industries where in a situation like COVID, there's an emergency and you need to get people directly. So they had reached out through the Chamber of Commerce, I believe, to have people sign up and be part of that. So we jumped right in there to be, as available and helpful as we could. Back then, people were trying to get the ventilators made, and we had we were there for the wire and cable. So, and again, it also put us in a category of being essential. So we were able to keep going throughout without worrying about, working from home or any of that, because it's hard to manufacture cable in your living room.
You can't,
And we have gotten more new customers in the last 2 years than probably the 10 years prior combined. Wow. Yeah. A lot of people have come back from overseas. Again, I've been in this industry a long time, around this industry a long time. It's amazing to me how history repeats itself. Every time there's an economic crisis, it seems that the wire and cable industry eats its young. So, you're too small of a client. We don't want to deal with you. We're going to go over here and deal with this big guy with the big wallet. And then on the other side of that, the big guy with the big wallet now gets to extort you against your competitor, and then, more and more businesses go under, and the world gets smaller and smaller.
Which leads me to, you're only, what did you say, one of 11?
I believe there's 11 of us left in the United States doing this.
So you're probably in your product that needs an industry that needs a coiled cable. More than likely, you're probably a supplier. Would you say that? Would that be?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Yeah, we're definitely, we've been around. So we're the second oldest company in the industry. Whitney Blake is the only one older than us. Hi, Sheldon. But they have not remained in the same family all along. They're on the second or third owners. Okay. We're the second oldest, but we've been in the same family all along, so we still have the cookbook from day one, and we've been able to maintain that science, that magic that I talk about.
How have things changed? I mean, I'm guessing regulations have changed as far as how cables maybe, I have no idea, need to be produced, but has the manufacturing process changed? Has the materials changed? Or we're still 75 years still?
The materials are definitely, they change yearly. So as science gets better, when my father first started the company, everything was neoprene rubber. If you can find somebody in the United States who would deign to even try to produce neoprene rubber at this juncture, I'd be shocked. I don't even think China is willing to do it, because it's really such an environmental and safety nightmare to process that product, and it takes a tremendous amount of space. So
is it a better product? That aside.
I'm not going to say it's better. That wouldn't be fair, but it's a very durable product.
Gotcha.
And of course, in the 70s and the 80s, rubber was easier to get a hold of. It's a petroleum-based product, and it's purely petroleum-based. Okay. The thermoplastics are also petroleum-based, but they are developed by science. So they have, one of the materials we use is thermoplastic elastomer. So it does have a rubber component to it, anywhere between 4 and about 12% rubber, and then the rest of it is an extrudable plastic. So it doesn't, the neoprene rubber had to be what was called vulcanized, which requires steam that I believe is 600 degrees.
Wow.
To set the product. We extrude it on a machine that melts the plastic, puts it right on the copper, and then goes into a cooling tank. So you don't have that steam, you don't have the space that's required. It makes it a lot more economic to produce. And then, like I said, the materials are changing all the time. It's unbelievable. Dow, DuPont, everybody gets in. We've got Hytrel is something that Dow Chemical, Dow or DuPont, I should probably not get that wrong, but one of the Ds came up with back in the day that they held that patent for years and years and years, which was a highly retractable material that didn't require a lot of jacket or insulation to get that snappiness to it. Okay. They let that patent go a few years ago, so now there's derivatives of that out in the market manufactured by other people, which also helps to bring the price down.
So you need to use your jacket is, it might be different from some straight wire you'd buy somewhere else. It has to have a certain.
The materials basically for wire and cable are relatively the same throughout. Okay. There's different types of wire. So we produce appliance wire material, SVO, SJT, SEOW. These are ratings that come from underwriters' laboratories that tell you the amount of voltage that these cables can handle safely, even the abrasion, the beating they can take out in the world if they can see sunlight or chemicals or that sort of thing. So that's pretty standard across the industry, the materials that we use, but it just, depending on where you're putting them, for instance, there's a type of wire called THHN, which is a construction wire. After that big fire in London where that huge high-rise building came down.
Okay.
So they've changed the regulations on material like that to make it safer for construction, so it's not as flammable. You know,
Gotcha.
you can look at, so Tesla, I don't think they're doing it anymore, but for a while, a lot of the wire that they were putting in their cars was a soy-based wire. Unfortunately, that attracted rodents who ate it.
Oh, interesting.
So
Good. There's, well,
it was a nice intention, didn't go
Good
so good.
intention, thank you, yeah.
So again, science is constantly looking at ways to make a comparable material that's more environmentally sound, less expensive, and of course, safer to produce for the employees, again, along with the environment.
So the auto industry, I could imagine there's probably coiled cable somewhere along the line in an automobile.
I
Yes or
used to
no?
see them in the back of like a Chevy Tahoe,
Okay.
that back window that opened. There used to be two
Okay.
coil cords right in there. You'll see the trucks that take cars to dealerships that have that second deck on them. You'll see coil cords hanging
Okay.
off the back of there. Those are pendant cords, they're called, so that holds the device that you
Gotcha,
use
yep.
to move the ramp and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So they're there, but again, the automotive industry is a big industry. They hang out with the big boys,
Gotcha.
and they all work together for the
Gotcha.
most part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see. But my point being, though, these coil codes are pretty much, I could probably walk around here and find some.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm shocked at this point with the electrical vehicle charging stations that they haven't utilized the coil cords more.
Yeah.
Because that would again be a great space saver for them. You could have a cord that hangs at 4 feet that can extend out 20
Yeah.
feet. So if your vehicle runs out of power right before it gets to the power station, you can still
can
get there,
stretch it,
type
yeah.
of thing. And there's even materials that you can put in to make the cords glow in the dark.
Okay.
What a lovely safety feature,
Yeah,
right? Or
absolutely.
a helpful feature. So at this juncture, I haven't seen much going on there. We certainly did investigate it ourselves, like 8 years ago. But there's some regulatory issues. It's a newer product, so
Yeah.
they're at their highest standards or their most unreasonable standards, and they'll weasel their way out as we go along, and those get more pervasive.
Gotcha. Have you ever thought about manufacturing a cable for a different industry, something maybe like a hose, for instance, like an air hose or something like that, so it's not electrical, or maybe it's, I don't know, just
We did.
Not
So
electrical?
when COVID first hit and we weren't sure what was going to happen, how long it was going to go on, we looked at the machines that we possess and what other capabilities we had. And with our extruder, with some adaptation, it would actually be able to produce the tubing, medical tubing for like IVs and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we had that as a plan, F, if we
Gotcha.
needed to get there.
Gotcha, yeah, yeah. But so that never happened then. You're still
Thankfully, no.
So you've always been doing that.
We've,
really never.
yeah,
you-
we've always done the power and communication cables. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Because I could imagine that's a whole. Because now it's medical, right? So that's a whole different.
Whole different
whole
ball
different thing,
game
yeah,
for
yeah.
regulatory. Now, granted, they threw a lot of the regulations out the window temporarily
Sure.
back then. So, who knows if we had needed to do it, we probably would have been able to do it and do it well. But
What are some, like, we know probably the big ones, right? Like you mentioned, on the back of a truck, we've all seen different, coiled cables on different things. What are some ones maybe that we don't know about that maybe we use all the time?
some of my favorite projects over the years. So we produce some coil cords for an exoskeletal suit for paraplegics.
Oh, wow.
So that brought me a lot of pride. I was very glad to do that. Another one that I thought was exceptionally cool was just a one-off. A gentleman owned a construction company. He was building high-end houses, and what he did was the top drawer in the bathroom, he put the outlet on the back wall of the drawer, attached a coil cord to that, so you could keep your razor, your coil cord, your curling iron plugged in, and you just had to pull out the drawer. So I thought that was exceptionally cool.
That's very cool.
We had a gentleman who invented a snow scraping device for the roofs of buses and trucks. And it used a coil cord to power it and go back and forth, which I thought was really, really cool. So we have a lot of really neat, I think that's the best part about being in the boutique side of it, is we're really there at the beginning when people are developing these neat products, and we get to work with them to help them power it.
So if there's somebody in his garage, right, working on some sort of product, like the guy with the drawer, he'd call you up or go down to your shop
absolutely.
and chat with you about here's my idea. And
yeah, we did actually for a cattle farmer in Maryland. I made some glow-in-the-dark extension cords for him because his cattle barn was dark and he wanted to make it a little safer. So we did that just one, for him, and I did with like 10 of them just for him. So our theory is if you have money, we have wire.
That works. Yeah, that works. How far are your clients? Are you national, international?
International.
International.
Yeah.
So everywhere.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Yeah. So you sell to China?
No.
Okay.
No. I can't say that my distributors who buy from me don't sell there, but I made some rules a long time ago for the things that I felt comfortable with from an ethical standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and for the health of my industry. And that was my concern was selling to China. As I mentioned earlier, Asia never really figured out the magic of it all. And so if we send stuff there, they're going to backwards engineer into it. So I'm not going to make it easy.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, keep yourself safe while you can.
Yeah, and we don't, if there are countries that we know from a global political standpoint, we shouldn't, it's a no-no, then we know no. We actually let a client go this year over the issue in the Ukraine. Well, I shouldn't say that. We let them go prior to that because they had a bad attitude. Yeah. But 6 days after I fired them as a client, they were on page 2 of the Wall Street Journal for being in the Ukraine. So, I guess you could see it coming. You know what I mean? If you're going to stay over there. Blah, blah, blah. So we were glad we let them go. And we have on occasion fired clients for, either ethical stuff or just for their attitude sometimes.
You don't hear that a lot. People firing clients. I mean, you do hear. I've, talked to different people who get rid of clients that, for whatever reason. How does that work? I'm just curious. How does that work for you? I mean, what's the decision process? Is it just you? Do you have your board or whoever sits down and talks about it? And what are some of the bigger offenses that you'd have to say, like, you know what, I know this is a good client. We're maybe bringing in, fair amount of money with them, but it's better if we let them go.
So, for instance, with that particular client, they had started to change, not only for us, but their other vendors. They had created their own internal quality control system that wasn't ISO or any, it was just individual to them, right, custom. So once they developed that system, then they decided that they wanted certain tests to be carried out. And then they decided that the vendors and the manufacturers would do those tests. And, oh, by the way, we're not going to pay you to do that. So that's a problem. And some of the things involved in that quality control program may have worked well with the many millions of other products that they buy and sell, but weren't germane to wire and cable. And sometimes when you get an engineer on the phone, there's no telling them otherwise. So we went round and round about that a few times. They also decided that they wanted a year to inspect and return products instead of 30 days. And they were a big client with a small profit margin, but a large part of our business. So the profit margin was going to disappear pretty quickly. And so it just became a very easy decision, again, between kind of their treatment of us, their behavior, their attitude, the unreasonableness of what they were asking, and at the end of the day, the economics that sooner than later we were going to be in business to hand these people money instead of running our own business, and that's not what we're there to do.
Yeah.
So we cut them loose and wished them well.
Awesome. That's good. What's happening in the future? Do you keep track of trends? Do you shift before something happens, or do you have that much, future foresight?
We try. So by nature, I'm just a wicked geek. So I skip down the driveway Saturday morning to get my Saturday journal. It's my highlight of my week. I read the news every morning, every night. I listen to podcasts from the industry, usually to get myself to sleep. So I try to listen and see what other people are doing. I also like to let other people stick their toe into the pond and check the temperature before I jump in behind them. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, soy-based wire was getting real big for a minute there.
Not so much.
Not so much.
I mean, it's a great idea. But,
unless you want to feed the rats.
Yeah.
So I do look at those things, think about those things, and we try to stay ahead of it. But we've done really well with it.
Yeah,
I think so
like
far, and we're always looking for opportunities. My friends, it's a running joke with all of them. We'll be out somewhere, and all of a sudden I'm missing. And they'll find me on my hands and knees, investigating a coil cord on a machine, or, at the casino, or one of my friends found me, in a dress and heels on the back of a semi-truck at a truck stop, checking out the cord on the back of that and talking to the truck driver. So that's how you
Wow.
find your way into those new products, is getting to the people who use them and ask them what they need.
So when I would look at a coiled cord, I just see big ones and small ones, all right? So, there's got to be more to it. So can you tell maybe if it's manufactured different, all that kind of technical type stuff, and can you say like, oh, that's probably made by, if it's not yours, that might be made by such and such? Are the variations that distinct between company to company?
So material-wise, you can usually look at something and go, okay, that's made from PVC because it's shiny and glossy, or it's a polyurethane, but it's not a flame-retardant polyurethane because it's shiny and glossy. You can look at something else and see that it has an elastomer to it because it has that matte, rubbery type of exterior to it. So those sort of things are pretty easy to see. As far as who manufactures what, a long time ago, the distribution side of the chain asked us to please everybody to stop putting their names on the wire, because then it opens up the capability for the customer to go around the distributor and come straight to us.
Okay.
So nobody does that anymore, but we all are required on the larger cables to have our E number, which is the identification number that UL gives us on that wire. So if somebody knows what they're doing, they can find their way in.
Have you seen cables that you've made out and about and be like, oh, that's holding up well?
Yeah. When I was in college, I got to do some work for some smaller NASCAR teams up here in New England. And I remember I went with one of the pit crews to look at a truck that they wanted to get to haul their vehicle. And in the truck, when they lifted up the ramp, there was a coil cord underneath. And even back then, I crawled right under there. And it was an old neoprene coil cord that Autac had sold back in the 1970s or whatever, and it had Autac right on it.
That's
so,
wild.
Yeah, that made me really happy.
Yeah, you must smile when you see that. That's great. So, Autac, I have no idea, because I mispronounced it at the beginning of this podcast. So, again, and when we had our initial phone call, so I'm sorry. So, Autac, does that mean something? Is it a name that your dad came up with? Give me the origins of that, please.
So it is an abbreviation for automotive accessories.
Oh, yeah.
Because all we did was truck cords to start with. So that's where
there you
Autac
go.
came from.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, the only other competitor at the time was Whitney Blake. This is back when people still had phone books. So if you were the letter A, you got to be the first one that they called. So I think that's where my dad was going with that.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah. Autac. And has the logo changed over the years? No. It's just that's what it came up with. That's what it's been. Is that important to you? Like making sure that is obviously, so it is, right? Because that's how they don't necessarily see the name, right? But they may see an outline of it. I mean,
it's
recognizable.
really identifiable. It's a strong brand,
Yeah.
and again, we've been doing this 75 years this September that we've been around. So yeah, I've never messed with that. We thought about a little around when we had our 70th anniversary. We talked about doing something retro and changing it a little and trying with the catalog and everything to make it a little more something from the 1950s. But ultimately decided, well, in the 1950s, we had the same logo, so why are we doing, and
Right.
kind of
Gotcha.
went back to stick to the business that you're in, and so
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have the because I believe it's red, right? So that always sort of been.
Yep.
So everything's
Red, white, and black
Red, white, and black.
are the colors. Yeah.
and
yeah.
that's it. I mean, it's definitely recognizable.
Yeah, and when we've done different catalogs, come out with different, when we were still doing a lot of printed materials, some years I did a blue cover, so we'd add that in. Another year we did almost like Smart Food. It was a black background with the red logo, and then we did some yellow, around it as well. But for the most part, I stick with that red, white, and black. Even my employees on the production floor, we have uniforms for them, and they're the Good Wrench red, white, and black. So the automotive industry stands strong in me still all these years later. So
Now, what about the in England, right? So you guys split. Was there talk about them changing their logos? Now you're two different companies. I mean,
I honestly can't answer that question. It was after my father died and possibly after my mother died, so I wasn't involved in that decision at all.
Yeah, I was wondering. I can't
a
remember.
little,
I think
a little
it's different.
above my grade, never my pay grade, my
Yeah.
grade. I was like a freshman,
Yeah. Is this something you're very proud of it? Your branding and your logo and your business. What's the future for the business? I mean, one of these days you're gonna maybe want to not go to work every day.
Yeah, right. My goal down the road, and taking a page out, I think it was Munger Construction here in town that moved over to an employee-owned company. All of my employees, and I'm very blessed, they've been with me, most of them, for a very long time. They're very invested in the business. They know the business very well. I don't have children of my own. My employees are kind of my kids. So that will be the goal down the road. I just turned 50 last year, so, retirement is closer to me than me starting in this industry is behind me.
Okay. Still some time, though.
But, a lot of this, it's a running joke in this industry. You can get in, you can't get out. I've seen so many people, business owners, literally their corpses wheeled out in their office chair. We're all a pretty dedicated bunch. So who knows what the future holds, which way that'll go. But that's my intent down the road. But I don't see me retiring
Anytime soon.
No.
It doesn't seem like you'd want to step away.
It wouldn't work
soon.
well for me,
No.
or for the world as a whole. I don't
There
think
you
so.
go. Yeah, I mean, really, being one of 11, that's a pretty big, because it's a big country. So,
It is.
And it's a big world.
It's a big world. It's a big industry. We're seeing more and more, even as the industry grows, and we identified this probably 20 years ago, there's a huge information gap in our industry. So a lot of the boomer generation stayed there right up till retirement. My generation didn't really come into this industry, and now we're seeing younger folks coming in, and there's not a great transfer of knowledge going on. There's a big gaping hole there.
Yeah.
So we feel very secure in the fact that not only myself but my employees know pretty much everything I do. We cross-train everybody there. So literally the guys on the floor can come into the office and write up sales, process payments if we're understaffed, and vice versa. Well, us gals can't really go out on the floor and run the machines, but we do understand them, and I send everybody out on the floor because I like to have that understanding.
So not only do the guys on the floor do the office, but
the office people spend time out on the floor.
At least they have an understanding and
Absolutely.
can do it in an emergency. But
yeah, it's the only way to develop a team,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, it's that us against them mentality, the white collar versus the blue collar, and
Yeah, I've
that's
been there.
all pure BS.
Yeah.
Everybody's there for the same purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I discovered many
that's great.
years ago. We had two separate buildings when I first took over. We had a headquarters in North Brantford and the manufacturing plant in Brantford. And I just, the talk in each building about the other building was just so, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
So I started first by grabbing the engineers, because they're usually the ones doing the talking, and dragging them over to the production floor and saying, okay, you know everything, show us how to make a coil cord. And they got humbled pretty quickly, developed a respect for the process that they didn't have prior. So instead of throwing production under the bus if an order was late, they now knew enough about the process to maybe foresee that it was being late, reach out to the customer, extend that message, and it improved our customer service all the way around.
Yeah, I think I've been there where, there's too much of a separation and people talk about whatever, and so that's. I think
It's
that's,
very destructive from the inside, and I just don't support that. I think everybody should know at least understand each other's job, so that it's not, oh, that person's an idiot,
Yeah.
No, they're not. You just don't know what they're doing, and it's worked really well for us.
So if you're gonna, let's do somebody on the manufacturing floor. If you're gonna hire somebody, if you need to hire somebody, would you hire somebody? You'd probably want to hire somebody with some sort of machining experience. I don't know what, or is it, or do you somebody can come in cold and you train them from the ground up?
We have worked for many years, but with the production crew, bringing in temps. And they all start out, a running joke as the stripper, the company's stripper, because you have to strip the cords off the rods. So that's where they all start out, and then they learn reversing, and then they learn coiling.
Okay.
And the guys on the floor, same thing. So I think all but one of my guys can run every single machine on the floor.
Wow.
So we don't have one extruder operator. We have 3 or 4 that can work together. So we do like a pit crew style change,
Gotcha.
To change over the machine. But that way, if anybody gets sick, anybody wants to go on vacation, whatever the case, the company keeps going and they can keep getting their paycheck.
Yeah. Who's longest employee? How long have they been there?
Right now, I have a gentleman. He's going on his 10th year in September. Okay. Yeah. So I had a crew for a long time, and then unfortunately I got sick, and I was out for about 5 years.
Holy
and
cow.
I had Lyme's disease.
Oh,
Well, I had 5 different tick-borne, but we'll call it Lyme's disease,
Okay.
and also kidney cancer at the same time. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was a rough patch there, and the management team that came in, my employees couldn't work well with, and a lot of people quit while I was gone, so I had to start fresh when I got back in 2015.
And you're good?
I
Cancer,
am
everything
good.
is.
I am good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great to hear.
yeah,
Wow, you
yeah.
made it. Good for you. That's,
It was a rough, but I learned a lot from it. I'm a yoga teacher now. I do holistic business on the side as well. So I took a lot of lessons from that, and decided to work with that to also share things with the world. Wire and cable's great, but people aren't excited to hear about that. So it's nice.
I think it's kind of cool.
Nice with my other business, I get a lot of opportunity to sit and talk to people about their health issues and the holistic side of that. And so, anything that goes really bad in life, if you can make it through, there's an opportunity there to learn something, to grow something, and to give something back. So that's the way I've hit
I've
it.
noticed that with people. I know them. There's one gentleman particularly. He's old. He had a stroke, and always been a nice guy. But there's a little because he survived. I won't go through the whole story, but they attention right away and everything. So, but there's a little shift in how he interacts with people and his outlook on life. It's it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think people go one of 2 ways. They either come out of it very bitter. Or they come out of it very grateful.
Yeah.
And I just, I've always just tried to be someone who can find the gratitude in a situation.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad you're doing well. That's
Well,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah,
That's
me too. But
Wow.
I've got I've got a great crew, and I'm grateful for that. And it was nice. It was nice to have a fresh start. I think we were very fortunate in many ways that happened to Autac, or to me, because we had to rebuild again before COVID hit.
Oh, yeah.
So we had already looked at everything. We got a little leaner, a little meaner. We got more organized. We got our training together. We had whittled down on the number of people we had prior to COVID hitting. So we were really uniquely prepared to deal with something that we could have never seen coming.
Yeah. Is there an open door policy where somebody on the floor or an engineer says, "Hey, Marie, this isn't really working. Can we change the way we do this? Or I like this
Absolutely.
product, or maybe I've seen this. Can we bring this into our inventory?" Kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
tell my guys all the time, you know how to do your job better than I do. So tell me what you need.
Yeah.
And we all communicate very well. And I appreciate with them too, the state of Connecticut prior to COVID, the Department of Labor had a lot of grants. So we participated in that a lot, and I send my employees out for any education they want, any education that I foresee that they might need. So we sent the guys out, for instance, to do a course through Constep where they learned how to repair a lot of their own machines, the electrical side of that, and that sort of thing. So we really try to keep our guys not only well-versed in the actual production of the wire part of their job, but we try to make sure that they're invested in the well-being of their machine, the understanding of what's needed there, why it's needed there. Most people, if they know the why, they're fine with it. Mm-hmm. So we really work really hard to as a crew, everybody's invested in that company and making it
So
going.
they feel like they have some ownership. So they're not just coming to work and pushing a button or whatever it is, then and they go home. They have a purpose for being there. It's sort of part of it's theirs, kind of.
It is. I mean, I wouldn't have a company if it weren't from. I'll never understand how people think that investing in software or hardware is more important than investing in the people who are going to run it. Your number one asset is not the building, it's not the machines, it's your employees. Yeah. And that's just always how my dad was that way. My dad was one of those people that he would pick up a broom and sweep the floor. He would clean the toilet. He didn't believe that anybody was ever above somebody else, and I'm very much from the same cloth. So I think that's worked really well for us. And again, they know their job better than I do. I can't run the extruder. I mean, I could, but I don't think it would go very well for any of us. So, I leave it up to them, and whatever they need, they know. They ask me, and I think it works really well for us. I mean, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think they like me. It's okay.
That's terrific. I think that's important to have. To feel like you go in and you have a say in the day-to-day, or even in this business, we need certain equipment, but it's about who operates it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any sort of certification that you need or the crew needs to be able to, because you go to some manufacturing, they have I forget what the codes are, the different certifications.
The NIC.
All that kind of stuff.
Yes,
I don't.
As far as the guys go, no, there aren't any certifications. Some of our equipment manufacturers do run training programs. Many years ago, well, not many years ago, several times over the last 20 years, Wire Association International runs a Wire 101 program. I've shut down the entire company and brought everybody to that twice. So they understand everything from how to mine copper to how it becomes wire and cable. We try to keep everybody well educated, up to date. Good. And like I said, many of our manufacturers now, especially a lot of our material manufacturers, are running webinars. And that makes getting information a little bit easier. Yeah. My guys they listen to, how to process materials, and they may learn troubleshooting with things they've already experienced, or it may give them questions that they want to get answers to, when we do that through our vendors.
I'm gonna have to come down and take a tour of the shop.
Please, absolutely. We love to give tours.
Yeah. So the copper, I would assume, come off a big spool, goes through some stuff, covered, and then it goes off to the coiling.
It's
process.
actually
that's pretty simplified.
Our extruder is very similar to a sewing machine, believe it or not. So, with the sewing machine, you take the thread from the bobbin, and it goes through this dancer, and it goes through that dancer, and it goes here, there, and eventually it goes through the needle it's the exact same process to get the copper from the reel over to the extrusion head where it meets the plastic. It's almost exactly the same.
So you said you use what is it? Braided, twisted? What is it?
Stranded. Yeah.
Stranded. Mm-hmm. So you can't use like a single. Is it too thick?
So when a piece of copper is solid, it's a rod.
Right. Okay.
It's not going to be flexible. It's not going to bend. So say we're working with 18 gauge copper. An 18 gauge rod is going to be the same size, as the stranded copper we use. But to get to, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but say it's 0.250. Instead of having a solid rod that's 0.250, you'll take, 40 something strands of 36 gauge copper and weave them together so you have like a rope.
Gotcha.
And it's more flexible. So it still conducts the power, but it's
But it moves.
pliable.
Do you do the stranding or you buy it that way?
No, I buy that.
You
Yeah.
do buy that.
Yeah.
Okay,
we buy
that's a
that.
whole different.
That is a whole different ball game. Yeah, that is a
Gotcha.
very different ball game.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Very interesting industry, but yeah, so glad
bet.
I'm not there.
This has been terrific. Anything you want to pass along that we may not have touched on that people might
Well,
find
like I
interesting?
said, we're having our 75th anniversary party September 1st here in Brantford at Bill Miller's, so we're very excited about that.
Right down the road. Yep.
We want to extend an invitation to all of the Chamber of Commerce members and the local politicians and anyone else who's curious. Come on down.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and outside of that, yeah, we like I said, we pride ourselves in being a customer service based business that give people wire to remember us by. That's my favorite saying. And at this point, as I had discussed with you earlier and mentioned the podcast, with this lack of information right now, this hole that we have, I feel it's our responsibility to kind of jump in and become a source of information for our customers as we go forward. So we're going to be working on putting together some vlogs and podcasts and different things that are informational for our customers and for anyone else in the world who's got a use for wire and cable and needs to know why.
One last question, because that smallest money-wise, what you think the company's worth, the person, smallest customer to largest customer?
Oh, smallest customer is a nice little man down in Florida who has a charter fishing boat.
Okay.
And I make these coil cords. He made his own electric reels, and I make the coil cords for
Okay.
him. So I think that's that. Or we also have an art gallery in New York
Okay.
that we make
Art
not
gallery.
power cords. These ones actually have nylon rope in them. So they're like the lanyards. If you fall off the toilet at the hospital, you pull a cord
Oh,
and someone
right.
comes and
Okay.
gets you.
Gotcha.
We make those as well.
Interesting.
So we did for an art gallery down in New York. They attached the what are those things called? Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass.
Magnifying glass.
They have them next to the paintings so that the people, it's obviously very high end.
Yeah.
People can get up close and look at the brush strokes
How did
strokes
they
and that
find
sort
you?
of
Did they
thing.
just search coiled
The
cords?
Google, baby, the
Wow.
Google.
So
Yeah.
they just called you up, you're like, hey, we want to do this. Can you do it?
Can you do this? Sure. We can give it a shot. I mean, the worst case scenario is we try and we fail, right?
Yeah.
But you got to
Yeah.
try. And then our largest customer is Wesco Distribution, which is, I believe, at this point, the largest electrical distribution company in the United States of America. They've bought up just about everybody over the last 20 years, and just last year bought up their largest competitors. So
Holy cow.
yeah, they're up there.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
But they have we offer what we call a platinum pricing program for customers that are $100,000 a year or more. So, that way we reward those large customers with a little bit of a competitive edge.
Gotcha.
So that, helps them, helps us.
Sure. Nice. Could I go to could I just call you up and say I need 6, 3-foot coiled,
Absolutely.
and then I can put my own ends on kind
You
of
can
stuff?
put your own ends on, or I have 2 sources here stateside, one right in Connecticut that can do the plugs for you. So we do offer as value-added services, plugs and connectors. We do removal of jacket for our customers and stripping of the insulated singles. We offer tinning. So we try to add a lot of side services. We're seeing a lot of customers right now struggling with removing the jacket off a wire to put connectors on. Like people are just, I don't know if they had a fight with their wife that morning or what, but they're just, really going at
Okay.
it, and it's actually a very gentle process. So again, under that, we're trying to pass on information, but we're also trying to make sure our customers are more aware of those services because we have the proper equipment, and it's much less expensive to have us charge you 10 cents a cut than it is to have Joe. I had a fight with my wife this morning over there destroying cord after cord after cord.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, we try to, like I said, we try to if I can't do it for you, I'll find someone who can.
Gotcha.
That's always how I feel. I mean, again, that's that customer service. They may not buy from me today, but if I help them solve a problem, then 10 years from now, when they need coil cords, they're still going to remember, because a lot of people aren't very helpful. So that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
If somebody wanted to buy a coiled cord from you, how would they get a hold of you?
1-800-243-3161, www.autacusa.com.
Autac.
AUTAC, USA.com. And then, of course, as us old people like to say, the Google.
Yeah.
You can hop on there and you can put in retractile cord, coiled cord, curly cord, or all different search engines or SEOs to use. And we're there as well, somewhere under Amazon and so forth and so on. But they don't manufacture.
Do you sell on Amazon?
No.
You don't. Okay.
No, I think that's another great way to give away the cookbook.
Okay.
Because then you don't
know who's buying from you.
Who's buying
So
it,
you
who's
know all your
backwards
customers.
engineering into. I mean, not for nothing, they're kind of famous for putting their clients out of business in the long run. So, I stay away from that. And I've even seen over the years, I mean, I had a competitor years ago that got so hot in the box about having a Home Depot for a client, and they were completely out of business within 2 years because of that one client. And Autac had a close call before I got back involved. There was a company called Lucent Technologies.
Yep.
And you may recall they went from $68 a share to 63 cents a share in about 24 hours. Back in the 90s, the company just tanked. Carly Fiorini, or whatever her name is, from California, was involved with that. But that had been a big client. The people who managed the company after my mom died and before I became involved, they got so excited. We've got this one big client. And they really kind of told everybody else to go pound salt.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, the big client isn't there anymore, and they're not going to pay the debt that they owe. And, so I'm a big believer in putting in my eggs in as many baskets as I possibly can. And with the big companies, I mean, we love them and we're happy to work with them if they're, good, reasonable, ethical people. But if you're going to come in the door with that whole, do you know who I am syndrome? Yes, you're the person who's turning around and walking out of my office. Here's the name for, my employees know, depending on which competitor I refer someone to, whether it's someone I want to succeed or fail.
Oh, interesting. I got to keep that in mind. But it's true too. It keeps it interesting, because you never know what's going to walk through the door.
You don't.
You don't know what you're going to... I mean, it's all going to be similar, but there's going to be, like the fisherman's, completely different application. And the art, I would never in a million years. I think.
That was right. Yeah, and we
great.
even offer those lanyards during COVID. We actually came up with what we call retractile mask, which was a little lanyard with clips on either end, so you could clip it to your shirt, clip it to your mask. When you weren't wearing your mask, it was right there.
Just right there, yeah.
When you wanted to put it on, so you didn't have to stuff it in your pocket at the
Right.
restaurant, pick it up off the
You
floor,
pick it up.
that sort of thing.
Find it in your jacket 3 months later.
Yeah, I mean, we were shocked it didn't take off more, but it worked really well for all of, especially me, because I was the gal who kept walking back to the car all the time. So that's, necessity is the mother of invention. One day I'm like, that's it, I'm making one of these. And so we still have those available. And we found a lot of other fun uses for those little things too, from, putting a pashmina on a hanger and so it doesn't slide off, connecting it back and forth. We had a little old lady who likes to recycle her plastic bags. So she'd rinse them out and clip one to each side and hang it up in the kitchen so the bags would dry. Adorable. So yeah, there's just a lot of uses, whether it's the power cable, communication cable, or, just the coil type lanyard stuff. There's a lot of uses out there for these things, and a lot more we haven't even thought of. There's brilliant people out there that'll come to us with great ideas, and we look forward to working with them.
Yeah, awesome. I hope you get a lot more interesting knocks on the door.
Thank you. Me too.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so terrific having you on. Thanks so much for coming by. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. See you, everybody.